happy, happy Friday. Hopefully, everyone's going to have an awesome weekend. Which I can say I'm going to have an awesome weekend, but I got a pest control coming tomorrow, which kind of puts a damper on things because I'm going to be waiting all day, and then at the last minute before 12, they're going to show up around 11. I just hate waiting on people. But with that being said, according to the Maciver, or not Maciver, but Maciver Institute, a free market voice of Wisconsin. Did I spell that correctly? No, well, it's the website. Anyways, let's go ahead and get to this story from the Maciver Institute, free market voice of Wisconsin. Yes, Biden is to blame for the energy crisis, and here's why. Dan O'Donnell show. Yes, Biden is blamed for the energy crisis for the man who has repeatedly promised to destroy the American oil industry. It is laughable that he's blaming Putin. President Biden, no more subsidies for fossil fuel industry, no more drilling on federal lands, no more drilling, including offshore, no ability for the industry to continue to drill. It ends. Drilling leases by the thousands are being held up by regulators and those that aren't facing lawsuits from environmental groups who are having a tacit approval of Biden or tacit approval from Biden administration. Biden needs to abandon his campaign pledge to kill American energy industry, but even energy emergency, Biden is doing everything to avoid increasing domestic oil production. And yes, I do know that there are some graphs showing that we're making more oil now, but almost barely. What do you think about gas prices? A reporter asked President Biden when he arrived in Fort Worth, Texas, Tuesday afternoon. Now, keep in mind, this is a older article, so I don't know when he was in Fort Worth, but it says, it's going to go up, Biden answered. What are you going to do about it? The reporter followed up. Can't do much now, Biden replies. It's Russia's responsible. There is some grain of truth to Russia being responsible because Russia is a oil exporter to Europe, and Europe gets most of their oil from Russia. And now that there's sanctions on place on Russia, and since oil is a global market, whenever there's a disruption like a war in Europe or even the Middle East, it tends to have these issues. Most of the time, within a couple of months, it goes back down to normal, but this case it is not going back to normal. For a president who promised to bring trust and accountability back to the White House, this was a very revealing moment for a man who has repeatedly promised to destroy the American oil industry. It's laughable that he's now claiming that the buck stopped with Vladimir Putin. On Tuesday, which was a really long ago, because this was back in March, I guess, yeah, March. I did have a clue where it was from. The average price hit an all-time record of 4.17 per gallon, up 21% just a week. The sudden spike is, of course, due to the sudden instability of the global markets following Russian invasion, but consider this: on January 2021, the day Biden was inaugurated, the average price of gas was $2.37, and on February 23rd, 2022, the day before Russia invaded Ukraine, the average price was $3.53. This means gas rose $1.16 on the first year of Biden's term, in large measure because Biden's policy only 0.064 so far is because of the war. And yes, Biden policies have made domestic energy production more difficult and less cost efficient, just as he repeated promise that he would while campaigning for the presidency. Will there be a place for fossil fuel, including coal and fracking, in the Biden administration? CNN Dana Brass asked during a primary debate In July 19th, yes, Biden is to blame for the energy crisis, and here's why. January, pretty much rehashing. Biden said no. Biden flatly answered, "We will work it out. We would make sure to eliminate it and no more subsidies for either of those. No more fossil fuel." In case it wasn't clear enough, 2 months later, he told a young supporter to look at him in the eyes as he promised that he would end fossil fuels. Kiddo, I want to look you in the eye, take a look at you, and smell you. I'm adding that part. Biden said to her, rather creepily, grabbed her hand and leaned towards into her. I want you to look into my want you to look in my eyes. I guarantee you, you're going to end fossil fuels. The promise formed a cornerstone of Biden's primary campaign as he repeated it often. What about you say stop fracking, stopping the pipelines? A supporter of the Iowa started to ask him a few days before the Iowa caucus. Yes, no more pipelines. Exactly, Biden jumped in before she could even finish her question. Even as the primary win seems inevitable in March 2020, he was no longer needed to court that far left environmentalist vote. Joe Biden was still promising to decimate the American energy sector. No more subsidies for the fossil fuel industry, no more drilling on federal lands, no more drilling, including offshores, no ability for the industry to continue to drill, he declared. It ends. He wasn't kidding. The day after he was inaugurated, he signed a executive order banning the fourth phase of development of the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have delivered oil from Canada to the refineries of the United States. I believe it would have gone to Houston. The move was the final battle in the year-long war environmentals as he waged against the project. TC Energy, an operator of the pipeline, abandoned it less than 6 months later. According to Kathleen Sagmama, I don't know how to pronounce your name, press secretary answered Jack 100 blame all oil producers for not developing on 900 leases. We cannot develop our leases if permits aren't approved. 4,500 outstanding with the Murad and other delays the administration puts on the way of the American producers. Biden followed up his initial executive order with a 60-day suspension of all new oil and gas permits on federally owned land and waterways, and followed up with another executive order directing Secretary of Interior to pause new oil and natural gases leases on public lands or in offshore water pending the completion and comprehensive review of reconsideration on federal oil and gas permitting and lease practices. The pause remained in effect until June when the federal government issued an injunction blocking the order in response to a lawsuit filed by 13 states affected by it. Biden administration was ordered to resume the sale on both onshore offshore oil leases, but has yet to do so. The gas line and home heating prices started to climb. The Biden administration has attempted to shift the blame for the lack of energy production onto producers themselves. There are about 9,000 approved drilling permits that are not being used, the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters last week. So to suggest that we're not allowing companies to drill is inaccurate, suggesting that it would be hindering preventing gas prices to come down is inaccurate. If that number is correct, and it may not be since fiscal year 2021 data is not yet available, that would mean a record high percentage of active drilling leases were being used, according to the Western Energy Alliance, an energy industry trade association. There are 37,496 leases in effect, and if only 9,000 of them are not being used, then a record of 76% of them are. In other words, the American oil industry is using more approved leases than ever before. One of the major reasons there may not be being used is litigation by environmentalist groups trying to stop drilling. Western Energy Alliance alone is in current court defending more than 2,200 leases. A full 20%, or not 20%, 24% of those are not being used because obvious they cannot be used while the lawsuit against them is still pending. Many of those aren't actively tied up in court or tied up in regulatory red tape. The Biden administration had made a point to make more stringent applied to the National Energy Policy Act, requiring environmental analysts before any new leases can result in new drilling. This process can take years, and even when the presidential administration hasn't made the war in energy industry one of its key policy initiatives. However, however, the stated goal of the president to end the oil industry, it could be used as a regulatory power to do just that, and so dramatically slow the lease approval process and it becomes impossible for said leases to be used. This is precisely what has happened over the year. Leases by thousands are being held up by environmental regulators, and then those that aren't facing lawsuits from environmental groups have tactic approval of the Biden administration. In addition, it is obvious slow walking the lease approval. The administration has not yet given approval of 4,621 permits to drill. Once again, the environmental concerns are generally hostile towards new oil drilling are to blame. The Biden administration could approve these permits quickly to allow new exploration and potential production, but has thus far refused to do so. Instead, the White House is engaging with Venezuela about exporting the oil to the United States to help offset the ban on Russia oil imports announced on Tuesday, according to the Wall Street Journal. Which is funny, they're going to one communist, well, not really communist, pseudo communist country, which is Russia. Putin is not a communist, he's more Democrat esque. Without going into the geopolitics, they're going to Venezuela, which is a communist state, which was hurting because we actually put a ban on their oil because of their being a dictatorship as well. So we're going from one dictatorship to another dictatorship. I don't know. Doesn't make sense. Offset imports Biden announced Tuesday, according to the Wall Street Journal. The president tried to set up calls with the leader of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Both declined to speak with him. They would actually pick up the phone for Trump. Now, I do know that Trump did negotiate a deal with the Saudi Arabia's and United Arab Emirates to cut down their productions. That's a fact. But I think he was trying to ramp up oil industry here in the United States. This is objectively humiliation that might have been avoided had Biden simply abandoned his campaign pledge to kill American energy industry. But the past year has proven that this was more than empty rhetoric. Even a national energy emergency, Biden is doing everything he can to avoid increasing domestic oil production. As a candidate, Biden repeatedly declared war on American energy industry, and a year into his presidency, the entire country is learning just how costly that war can be. Because right now we got several types of inflation. Now, I don't claim to be a economist, but we got two types of inflation here. We got the inflation of the dollar, which Trump is to blame along with Congress for flooding the markets with almost 80% of the cash flow. And we also have a supply and demand. There's more demand for gas, and when gas is actually high, that creates a cost inflation because it costs more to ship equipment and materials, which is causing the cost inflation onto other products. So yes, Biden is hurting you because he wants to kill the American energy sector. He wants to be relying on foreign energy or green energy, which will cost more in the long run, actually more in the short term. Studies out there might actually make it to where it's less cost efficient. Who knows? The technology is new, and I'm talking about green energy, but the issue is that our world economy runs on oil, and we have to wean ourselves off of oil. We just can't go cold turkey because the economy is crashing. Actually, the economy is crashing because the markets can't keep up with the price of oil. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. I don't know if I follow all of it. Maybe you don't follow it. Fair. Maybe it all goes into a line. All I know is Biden's policy is really hurting America. All you had to do was do nothing, and our economy would have been better off. Anyways, leave a comment down below what your thoughts are. Smash the like and subscribe button in all platforms or just the platform you're currently watching. But most importantly, have yourself an awesome weekend.